Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you, getting you ready for Week 18 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Our last preview pod of the season. Lance Reisland will give you a scouting report. We'll make our picks. But I mean, listen, let's not kid ourselves here. What really matters in this football game is not the football game. There's one thing, I guess, that matters in the football game. Maybe we'll talk about that a little. But what really matters is what's going to happen after the football game. And that is, will the Browns move on from head coach Kevin Stefanski? It still feels, Mary Kay, like Andrew Berry is safe in all of this. That has almost not even become a talking point at this point. But I guess we'll kind of put a circle around that too, just in case. But the big one is Kevin Stefanski, and will the Browns make a change at head coach? So, I mean, what do you think is going to happen here? What have you been reading the tea leaves? Have you figured anything out? Because I sure haven't. What do you think happens after this game?
Well, there's something swirling around here, right? I mean, there's just a vibe. There's an air of potential change that is hanging over Berea right now. And I don't know if it's going to turn out like that, or if they are all going to put their heads together and decide that the best path forward is for Kevin to remain as the CEO coach and for Tommy to remain in his sort of newish role as the play caller and offensive coordinator, and for Jim Schwartz to carry on with that amazing defense. And maybe that's the route that they decide to go. But also, maybe there's a world in which Kevin Stefanski would welcome a change of scenery. I don't know. We've seen and heard rumblings about that. I don't know if that's true or not. I would think that he would want to continue on and finish what he started here. This is a very young roster. I would think that he would want to do that. We talked to Jim Schwartz today. Of course, Ashley will talk about the fact that she talked to him, and he did reiterate that he would like to be a head coach, but he wouldn't talk about that today. I think out of respect for Kevin, it's not the time to sit up there and say, yes, I'd love to be a head coach, when your head coach right now might be negotiating for his job in some way, shape, or form. We don't know how it's all going down behind the scenes, but there is something going on. And one way or the other, on Sunday or Monday, we probably will know by then if Kevin is going to be moving forward with this team or if he's going to be moving on. And that's just the reality of the situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, Ashley, the whole vibe check thing of this week has been sort of, to Mary Kay's point, it has felt a little bit like, okay, this is probably the end. But I don't know. It wouldn't shock me completely if we're sitting here on Monday and Kevin Stefanski is talking to us and the Haslams have sent out a statement that, we've decided to keep Kevin and we still believe in Kevin Stefanski as head coach. It would surprise me a little. I wouldn't be like completely shocked by it just because I think the Haslams have sort of embraced this stability. But if we are doing that vibe check, it does feel a little bit like that's where this is headed.
It does.
I'm sorry. I should say it feels like it's headed towards Kevin not being here.
Yes. And I think we talked about this earlier in the week, but it's this idea of there's been no assurances from anyone that that's not where this is headed, right? So it's kind of like that silence is screaming right now. And it is sort of uncharacteristic when everything is A-okay, like heading into the off season. So I think that's a big part of it. Again, I mentioned this earlier in the week, like the fact that we haven't heard from Andrew Berry this season, I think is also playing a role in this, like for better or worse. So there was no point because he didn't do his bye-week presser that he's done in past years, that there was no sort of way to gauge how he was feeling, how the front office was feeling, where things stand. I think people also are obviously thinking about Paul DePodesta leaving. And at the time, people were wondering, even though he left on his own accord and got a different job, like, is, change potentially in the air? Are those guys tied together? And we talked about when the offseason comes, when you look at that in hindsight, I think it's going to become more clear if that was true or not.
So one of the things I've been thinking about, Mary Kay, and this is part of why I think the Jim Schwartz discussion is interesting, is if they change things, and again, this is under the assumption that Andrew Berry is not swept up in those changes. If that happens, then we're talking about complete organizational remake. But if Andrew Berry is still the GM and they do fire Kevin, there is a part of me that feels like they don't want to just disrupt everything. So you go out and you hire, I keep throwing out names like Jesse Minter or Robert Salt. Like, you hire a defensive coach, that probably means Jim is gone. And that's been your best unit all year. Do you want to disrupt that? Do you want to disrupt some of the things you have? I know the offense has not been good, but to the point you've been making, they really love Tommy Rees. They've made that very clear that he's a guy they really appreciate. We even threw him out as a possible head coaching candidate earlier this week. So, there's a world where you could just slide Jim Schwartz into that head coach seat. You can maybe promote someone at defensive coordinator. He could bring somebody in. Tommy Rees is still your OC. You make that coaching change without a ton of disruption. And I almost wonder if that's the direction they would lean instead of just doing, again, especially because if you are keeping Andrew, instead of just doing a whole organizational reset, just make, it wouldn't feel like a slight tweak because you're changing head coaches, but essentially just make a tweak at the top and everything else can kind of remain aligned.
Right. And also, you're looking at one of the best, most dominant defenses that the Browns have ever had. And do you really want to upset that apple cart? If you do promote Jim and make him your head coach, you can keep that continuity on your defense, even though you would probably have a different coordinator, but Jim would still be overseeing that. So I think there would be some merit to doing that. And again, I think they view Tommy Rees as an up and coming, brilliant offensive mind. He's been described as a savant and all those kinds of things. So I do think that there is some wisdom in doing it that way. But I guess you then would also have to decide, would you want a defensive head coach when it is the offensive side of the ball that needs the most help right now? And most people, I think it seems like most successful teams have more of an offensive head coach. So these are all decisions that would have to go into the hopper. And I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how they would go about it. We do know that Andrew Berry loves Jim Schwartz. They worked together in Philadelphia, and he thinks the world of him. And of course, Jim Schwartz got his start right here in Cleveland under Bill Belichick and Nick Saban and Mike Lombardi. And I hate to say it, but I was here. I was here back then. It's a long time ago, and we were all in our 20s. So, having said that, we are not in our 20s anymore.
I was gonna say, it's weird. You're still in your 20s somehow.
But I memean, it is pretty bizarre to think how long it's been since I saw him bopping around here with Eric Mangini and Ozzie Newsome and, Phil Savage. And it's just, it really, really is bizarre. So I'm sure he would love to have the job. I'm sure he would love to have this job. I think they just have some decisions to make. And it's just a matter of, do they open it up? I mean, do they just decide that he's going to be the coach and then fulfill the Rooney Rule and interview, some minority candidates, which they would have to do? Or do they open it up and do a comprehensive search? Lots of decisions to be made, I think.
Well, yeah. And of course, there's the whole, there was the Mike McDaniel report. There was, so yes, it feels like there's an easy path forward, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best path forward because you do want to, if you're going to make a move like this, you want to make sure you're getting the best person. And Ashley, you wrote about this a little bit in your story, and we've talked about it. Like for a guy like Jim Schwartz, I don't know that there's going to be a bunch of jobs out there for him because he's 59 years old, because he's on the defensive side of the ball, because as great as this defense was, this was still a 4-win football team, maybe a 5-win football team after Sunday. We'll see. But, you're still hiring a coordinator from a team that was not very good. That's a hard sell outside of this market. In this market, I think you could sell it just because people have seen this defense and know it and they know Jim. But outside this market, that would be a tough sell. So it would be a great opportunity for Jim, but at the same time, there is a reason that young offensive coaches are in vogue, and it's because if you're going to build around a quarterback, you'd like to keep that pairing around for a long time instead of having to always replace your coordinator. Ask Buffalo how hard that is to always have to replace your coordinator. Obviously, they've had success, but it's not fun to have to do that every few years. So I don't know. To me, I would open it up and see what's out there. I would see what you could do. But it also just depends on how much you want to kind of upset things in the building, I guess.
Yeah, and I will say, like, hypothetically, the Jim Schwartz of it all, I don't think this front office or this team ownership group would have to do much to sell that hire at all here. I mean, based on the reaction to the feature and the interview I did with him, fans seemed very excited at that possibility of him wanting to potentially be a head coach again, right? And that's where this is so tricky for me because I think with how good this defense is, to me, GM Ashley sitting here, it doesn't make much sense to let Jim Schwartz walk. And we also know how highly they think of Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees, I think, is going to be one of those guys that every year you're going to have colleges or potentially other NFL teams trying to hire him away, given his pedigree, given the fact that, hey, he's now called plays here. He's called plays under Nick Saban. He called plays in Notre Dame as well. People really like him. So do you want to let Tommy walk? And now if we're talking about, well, you don't want to let your defensive coordinator go and you don't want to let your offensive coordinator go, I would argue, what's the point in then doing a comprehensive search if you're going to say, oh, we really need you to keep these two guys? Like at that point, just stick with Kevin in that sort of CEO role and go from there if you are that happy with Tommy Rees and what he's gotten with this offense and with Shedeur Sanders. But I think that's what's tricky is no matter what you do, the fact that most of these guys, this coaching carousel, are going to be the more defensive minded head coaches. Is that really what you need? Number one. Is it what you want? Number two, do you want to let Jim Schwartz go? And is it going to help your football team get better? I don't know the answer to any of that. Like my gut tells me, no, it's not. And I think that's not the popular answer for a lot of fans, because I think we're just kind of to the point after these two losing seasons that fans are clamoring for change. But I'm sort of the mind right now, like, is the grass actually going to be greener if there is that comprehensive sort of widespread search?
So I feel like that's what's weird about this. And, sometimes it's really easy to kind of be in the bubble, right? So, this is the team we're around all the time. These are the coaches we're around all the time. We're going on year 6 with Kevin here, right? And we're sitting here talking about a team that has won 6 games in 2 years. And we're like, well, do you really want to let people walk out the door? Do you really want to let these coaches leave? So it's sort of it's a weird thing, Mary Kay, because the success obviously on the field hasn't been there. But I mean, I still think Kevin Stefanski is a good coach. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Browns have to keep him, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be a mistake to move on. Maybe it's just time. Like maybe that ship has just sailed and everybody needs a change of scenery. But it is sort of this weird disconnect. We're talking about a team with back-to-back 3-win seasons. And we're also kind of like, well, are you sure you want to let Kevin go? And if you do let Kevin go, why don't you just promote some coaches that are already here that have been part of these 6 wins in 2 years? Like the fact that we're not just saying without a doubt, just sweep everybody out of here and start over. It's kind of a weird thing, I guess.
It is a weird thing. And we really don't know where this is going to end up. I mean, I don't think any of us have a really great handle on it. I think if we had to guess right now and, we were painted into a corner, I think we would all say it seems like he's going to be gone. But, cooler heads might prevail over this. They might talk about this over the next few days and decide that the easiest and best thing to do would be to let him see this through, because they did supply him with 2 rookie quarterbacks. Dylan Gabriel went 1-5. Shedeur Sanders went 2-4. It's really hard to win with rookie quarterbacks. And maybe if they make some other changes here or there, or maybe Kevin wants some things to be different for him to want to stick around. So we don't really know exactly what's going on. I did walk up to Jimmy Haslam at practice one day about 2 weeks ago, and we made a little bit of small talk for about 60 seconds.
Were you talking Milwaukee Bucks basketball? Or?
Yes. We talked for about 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds at the most. And then I think before he realized, I might have to answer a Kevin Stefanski question, I think I'm going to walk over there. So that was a very short-lived conversation. But no, we don't really know. And we have not heard too much just getting out there, right? One of the things that we did hear, of course, from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, was that Mike McDaniel, former Browns receivers coach, would be a candidate if the Miami Dolphins part ways with him and if Kevin is let go. And we know he was the receivers coach here under Kyle Shanahan. We know he's got a very bright offensive mind. And I know that there are people in the building that really admire his offensive wizardry and his offensive genius. I know that. But who knows if Miami would even let him go? He's won 6 of his last 9 games. If you're winning 6 of your last 9 games, I'm probably not letting you out of the building. Maybe that had a lot to do with Tua or just the way the offense was constructed or whatever. But it seems like the Dolphins have kind of gotten their act together, and it just doesn't seem like fire McDaniel time. So I don't know if that would be in play or not. There's just a lot that's going to happen over the next week that we just don't know yet.
Yeah. And, to people who look, I'm a little cynical of the idea of hiring Mike McDaniel, weird press conferences, all that stuff. But you can't deny what he did when he went to Miami. How he essentially turned to his career around and turned that offense into a juggernaut. Now, obviously, it never got much beyond the point where they would make the wild card round. And, there were some issues where they just beaten up on bad teams or whatever. But listen, beggars can't be choosers. When you're the Cleveland Browns, they're not even beating up on bad teams. So I could see how they could look at Mike McDaniel, give him a young quarterback, let him kind of because that is the side of the ball where it's been bad. It's the offensive side. So let's remake that offensive side of the ball with an offensive head coach like that. I could see how they could talk themselves into something like that. And the other thing I keep coming back to, Ashley, though, is the only people who are willing to stand behind a microphone all offseason and say, maybe this season isn't going to be awesome, were the people making this decision, the Haslam. So I just wonder, are they going to sit down and say, we didn't think this season was going to be all that great. Maybe we didn't think it would be win 4 games bad, but we kind of knew this wasn't going to be an awesome season. So should we kind of listen to ourselves here and kind of keep this thing going?
Yeah, it just seemed like there was always that awareness because everyone knew, and the Haslams knew, they did not have that for sure answer at quarterback. I mean, the last time we talked to them, they were still in the middle of a 4-way quarterback competition, and Jimmy Haslam praised the way they had handled the whole thing. Now, we're not going to relitigate that right now. It obviously didn't go well. But then, of course, the other quote that everyone latches on to was him saying in that training camp presser, 3-14 is not going to cut it. Well, they've now at least won 4 games. They potentially will have won 5 by Sunday. We will see. Obviously, that's still not great. That's not where you wanted to be as this team for really the second straight year. So I think what it comes down to is with owners, they're always unpredictable. You never know how much they're going to be swayed by, fan sentiment, who's in their ear, what they're thinking about this. And of course, with the Browns and with the Haslams right now, you also have to consider hey, everything's going on with the stadium right now. They're concerned about that stuff as well and selling that idea to fans still, I think. So you put it all in there, you mix it all up, and it's very, very interesting in terms of the public opinion of this franchise. How much are they going to be swayed by that side of things?
Well, once again, week 18 is going to be interesting for what happens after the game, not what happens during the game. Although there is one thing that could still happen during the game that would be interesting. That, of course, is the Myles Garrett sack chase. Let's just talk about that for 2 minutes before we get to the scouting report. Mary Kay, you couldn't ask for a better matchup if you're Myles Garrett to finally get number 23.
Right. And you know what? He has sacked Joe Burrow, I think 12 times now. It's either
11 or 12.
11 or 12, because one of those sacks that is credited to Myles on Joe Burrow actually went to Jamar Chase. He sacked Jamar Chase. So I do think that he's got a great chance of getting it on Sunday. I think it would be really, really hard with Myles playing with his hair on fire and knowing he's got one game left to do this. I think it would be very, very difficult for the Bengals to hold him off unless they do every single thing in their power to not let it happen in the same way that the Steelers did and in the same way that some other teams have done. And we've already heard from Joe Burrow that he doesn't intend to do that he's not going to avoid that sack at the expense of trying to win a football game and play good football and make the play. He's not going to do that. That's not going to be his absolute number one priority. And if it's not, then Myles is going to get home and he's going to get that sack and he's going to get a consolation prize out of this very disappointing season for everyone.
Yeah, and even Grant Delpit today said, individual stuff doesn't really matter when you're losing like this, except for Myles. They're all still thinking about that number. And, look, the Bengals are still kind of like this Browns team. They're still playing hard. They're still trying to win football games. So this isn't going to be a game where they just turn and hand the ball off 40 times. They're going to line up and play.
Yeah, and looking at the stats before we came on here, between Joe Burrow and Joe Flacco this season, they've given up, I want to say, 34 sacks. Obviously, that's an area where they've historically struggled, particularly against the Browns in this Jim Schwartz scheme. So Look, I said coming into last week against the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers, knowing what he does well, guessing that he was going to really do his best to avoid that sack. Like I did wonder, it could be very possible that Myles didn't get it last week. And I think the Bengals are just such a better matchup for him in that way. And the O line is just not nearly as capable of, I think if you even start talking about who can they double and chip with, like they don't have that same ability that Pittsburgh did, even, I don't think.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Lance Reisland is going to give us his scouting report on the Bengals, and we'll come back. And for the last time this season, we will make our picks for Sunday's game. Welcome back to our Orange and Brown Talk Browns and Bengals preview edition. We welcome on, as we have all season long, Lance Reisland. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Dan. How are you? Happy New Year, buddy.
Yeah, you too. I will tell you this, Lance. We actually accidentally missed the ball drop yesterday. So folks who listened to our earlier pod this week when we talked about holiday traditions, I actually just missed it.
Yeah, no. So I made it, but the only reason why is because we did the Ohio State game, and then I actually taped the second half because I told my daughter I'd watch Stranger Things with her. So that ended at so you let me watch the first half, and then ended up like 11:30. I barely made it to the ball drop, and went to bed at about 12:03 probably.
There you go. Yeah, I was in about the same boat. But yeah, my daughter came out. There was about 15 seconds. We were watching a show, and there was like 15 seconds till the ball drop, and then it was like, oh, I guess we should try and find it. We didn't do it in time, so just completely missed it.
Well, well, it shows that our podcast early in the week was for real.
yeah, right. Let's go all the way back to where we started, week 1. Browns playing the Cincinnati Bengals, and I want to start on the defensive side of the ball. Has this Bengals defense, which early in the year was one of the worst defenses I've ever seen, has it gotten any better?
Yeah, it actually got better from the time they played the Browns. I think the Browns kind of exposed. The Browns had a lot of yards and had some pretty solid yards, some pretty solid gains in that game. They didn't have Judkins, obviously, week 1. They had a couple turnovers that really cost them. Obviously missed an extra point to field goal that really cost them. So special teams start off week 1 kind of hurting them. Obviously, that was the only time, in my opinion, the kickers or one of the kicker or punter actually hurt them. But yeah, the defense as a whole for the Bengals has gotten better. I think they do a better job of not giving up explosive, but they're not outstanding. Obviously, losing Cam Taylor-Britt, Hendrickson is out, but they still got some pretty good players, and they seem to play as a unit a little bit better. They don't have any like blown gaps as much as they have last couple of games. They've been pretty solid and playing pretty hard too, like the Browns, even though they're not involved in anything.
So how can the Browns then attack this defense? Like, what's the best way to kind of get at this Bengals defense at this point?
Well, obviously inside, for me, it's the secondary, right? So you have Cam Taylor-Britt's out, who I think is outstanding. But you look at Dax Hill, you look at DJ Turner. Those guys are solid guys, but guys who compete with double moves, guys who aren't good. They're solid. I think they're better zone corners than they are man corners. So if you get them in man, take a shot. Then you got Geno Stone and Jordan Battle. Now, I like Battle, but Geno Stone's a guy that can be had, and he likes to get his nose down in the box. These guys can all be had in all 3 phases of how I kind of grade a receiver, right? They can be beat off the line of scrimmage. They can be beaten at the catch point, and they're not great tacklers. Jordan Battle's a pretty good tackler, but you got to get the ball in space, and you got to get guys on the run. So that would be my best bet. I think, with Hill inside and, obviously Jenkins is out, but they're still fairly stout inside, and they're going to try to get 6 in the box all the time. So I think you got to attack with the pass game. I think you got to figure out what you got and try to attack these corners and safeties in the pass game, especially intermediate. Safeties are deep, corners get beat off the line of scrimmage. That leads to a lot of open areas from that 10 to 20 yard chunk.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because this is a team that the Browns might be able to run the ball against, even though they don't have Quinshon Judkins, and I know Dylan Sampson is playing banged up. But it sounds to me like you're saying the best way to get at him is some of that intermediate stuff to Judy Tillman, maybe get Malachi Corley in space or Isaiah Bond in space. And we did see a little bit of that, I thought, in this last game against the Steelers.
Well, yeah, you have Slayton. I thought he was a great pickup earlier this year, but he hasn't played great. BJ Hill is always a stout guy inside. Obviously, Myles Murphy and Osai, those guys are edge rushers, right? They're not really stout at the point of attack and run, so you can run, but I would say you run at the edges is going to be your best bet, especially running right at Myles Murphy. He's a guy who likes to rush pass, and I think you can kind of But it's marrying the run with the pass, Dan. So it's if you can create that run game, then you get those linebackers up, and then you can kind of throw under that umbrella they like to create in the back, again, in that intermediate range. But they got to marry the run with the pass. That's what helps those offensive linemen. When these offensive linemen struggle, especially the tackles, is when they're in specific, must pass down a distance. They got to stay out of that. And Shador's got to continue to check it down to get him. If they're going to throw it on first down, nothing's there. Take the check down to get it to 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 6.
So is this a good, like, I guess specific to Shador, is this a good matchup? Is it a bad matchup? Can we even say that about this game? Like how does this matchup fit with what Shador wants to do?
Well, I think Trey Henderson being out makes it a pretty good matchup. He's an elite pass rusher, and he doesn't play the run quite as well as Myles does, but he's in that category of game wrecker kind of guy. So having him not in, having Cam Taylor-Britt, who I think is outstanding in coverage and is a guy who likes to take chances, I think it's a very good game for him to. It depends on what the Bengals are trying to do. Are the Bengals in, like, we want to evaluate a couple guys in the secondary? Because if you want to evaluate guys in secondary, you're going to put them in man. And you're going to see what can this guy do in man, with the idea that most NFL quarters can play some zone. I think if you're in valuation mode, you're going to see a lot more man. Now, if they're in win the game mode, which I think most NFL teams are, regardless of their record, then you're going to see some zone, and they're going to make Shador check it down underneath. I still think what teams are going to try to do is that they're going to make Shador get to that second, third progression and continue to take that check down. As he continues to do that going into this game, into next year, that'll open up what everybody wants and what he likes to do, which is stretch it vertically. It's a numbers game. Run the ball better, check it down. Those guys start creeping towards the line of scrimmage. So for me, if the Bengals are playing it to win it, then it'll be a lot of checkdowns. It'll be boring, but it should be a very productive game for him. If they're playing it to try to, bring some pressure and man and try to create some turnovers and have some fun for the last game, then you'll see some balls deep if the Browns can pass protect.
All right, so let's move to the Bengals offensively. Look, this is a team that Browns fans know well. They know this offense well, this receiving core well, this quarterback very well. But let's start with Myles Garrett. There was a lot of talk. We talked about it on the Tuesday pod. Did the Steelers kind of game plan more around Myles than trying to win that game? We both kind of disagreed with that notion. But with the way the Bengals have played Myles over the course of his career, I think we'll know if the Bengals are game planning to stop Myles or win this football game. Do you expect them to continue to sort of do the things that they've always done against Myles Garrett?
Yeah, it's funny. Zach Taylor doesn't change his MO. He's a 5-out guy, right? And, there's different ways to look at it, and it's not always the case. And I've had people say, I'll show you some examples, but there's two ways to, when teams are man or pressure teams or gap penetration teams, there's two ways to you beat it. You block it or you beat it. And Zach Taylor's a beat it guy, right? He wants to get 5 out. He's depending on Joe Burrow to get rid of the football. You heard Joe Burrow earlier in the week say sometimes the sack is is something that's the least damaging to it, right? Because if you throw the ball out, if they cover the check down or whatever it may be, but Zach Taylor's a guy that doesn't like to chip a ton. Chase Brown's not a great chipper. They like to use him. They like to get him out in space. He's an outstanding receiver out of the backfield. They love to be in 11 personnel, obviously with Chase and Higgins and Yoshivas. Gesicki's a solid tight end, but they really want to be in 11 personnel. They want to get 5 out, and they want to find a matchup. And that doesn't, when the Browns are healthy, the Browns have always had, this has always been a great matchup for the Browns because they have elite pass rushers and guys who can really cover. So obviously, it's going to come down to, can they cover Higgins? Because I think, or whoever, let me rephrase this. I think, whoever Ward's on, I think Ward wins. And I think he wins a lot of it just because the pass, the pressure from the front doesn't allow them to get deep very much against Ward. So it comes down to who can cover Higgins, Yoshivas, and Gesicki, because I think Ward will do his, whoever he's on. I would like to see Ward travel with Chase and make Higgins beat you. You take the less of the evils, right? But that would be defensively the Browns, the deep scheme does not match up well, right? Styles make fights. And what the Bengals like to do does not match up well because they like to protect with just 5. And that's not good against this defense.
Now, obviously, with Joe Burrow, he came back from that injury. He's obviously playing in this football game. We all saw that Thanksgiving game. We know, obviously, it hasn't quite looked like that. But still, is this offense as dangerous as it's ever been?
Well, it comes down, yes, because of him. And now it depends on what they want to do. Obviously, Joe Burrow's a guy who, there's hints, his rumors that he wants to get traded and he's going to retire and all those kind of different things. that comes with taking a pounding. The guy has gotten his you-know-what kicked for a number of years. So do they go into this last game with the idea of, like, what is the plan? And we'll know early. If the plan is to protect Joe Burrow, they're going to run the ball a ton with Chase Brown, who had 100 plus last week against Arizona. Or do they say, you know what, we're going to do what we normally do, and we're going to let Joe kind of dictate the game? Now, Joe Burrow being the competitor he is, it seems like he's a guy that would not want you to kind of rest him, even though he's playing, if that makes any sense, right? By hanging the ball off, if it's 3rd and over 8, run the ball, things like that. But you'll know early on, are they protecting him or are they trying to win the game? And I'll be interested, because if they're trying to win the game, Myles will have a couple sacks. I still think Myles is going to get a sack or two just because of their scheme and trying to get 5 out. But you're going to know early on, what is the plan from the Bengals? Are they trying to get the clock and get to warm weather, or are they trying to win the football game? You'll know early.
Well, and I think what's interesting too is when I think about Joe Burrow, and I also think back a little bit to that Patriots game that the Browns had earlier this season, where Myles had the 5 sacks, and with Drake May, right, he just kept getting up, kept looking for the deep balls. He wasn't going to change the way he was playing just because Myles was piling up sacks against him. And I feel like Joe Burrow is kind of like that too. Like, obviously, he doesn't want to take a bunch of hits and he doesn't want to get sacked, but it's not going to stop him from playing the way he wants to play.
Yeah, the only thing about Joe Burrow as you watch him play is that every time I watch film from the Bengals last 3 years, you cannot believe how tough this guy is. This guy absolutely, he doesn't take kind of like a shot or two. He takes 10 to 15 jaw-dropping shots a game. And it is hard to watch as a former quarterback. Like, his toughness is just so incredible to me. And they don't do a lot. I don't know if it's him or Zach Taylor, but they don't do a lot, like you said, to change it. They're going to get 5 out. He's going to take his verticals. He's going to try to, the Browns do a good job of taking away slants, hitches, and those quick things to Jamar Chase. So they try to stretch it vertically, which means he holds on to the ball a lot. So, yeah, I don't think he changes very much from what he does. Again, does Zach Taylor take it out of his hands? And is Joe Burrow okay with that? I've kind of noticed by his body language last couple weeks, he's kind of over being, thumped each and every week. So maybe he does hand it off a little bit more. But we'll see. He's a pretty big competitor, and he's really struggled against the Browns. So maybe he wants to come out and play.
Browns special teams, let's give him some credit, has been better the last couple weeks. Do the Bengals pose any big problems on special teams?
No, not really. Charlie Jones is good, but he's been banged up. So, you watch him week to week, he's not as explosive, and he's really good at that vertical push I always talk about on kickoff and punt returns, where when the guy catches it, he gets vertical for 10 before he does anything. And that's what Charlie Jones does, but he's been banged up. So he's not the same guy returning. Anybody else they have returning. Once again, though, the thing that frustrates me about the Browns at times is that that's a phase, just like you said, that was a phase last week that didn't really come into play. And if that phase doesn't come into play, you can win a couple more games, which if you go back to the Cincinnati game, and nothing against the kickers, because the kickers have been outstanding all year, but it was a special teams thing that cost him this game. It was a missed field goal and a mixed extra point. And he's obviously been awesome the rest of the year, and that's great. But, for protections and things like that, the problem is for the Browns is all that's on tape. And if you're the special teams guy at Cincinnati, you're trying to make a name for yourself. So you're trying to block a punt. Who's taking more pride in the attention to detail things week 18? That's what it comes down to. Are you going through the motions? Are you saying, they're going to pressure here? Are you doing your just due and working and going over everything you should have as a coach? We'll find out early, because things like block punts and, lane integrity, that comes from attention to detail during the week. So we'll find out quickly who prepared to win and who prepared to be done with the season.
Okay, Lance, I'm going to ask you a trivia question before I get your pick.
All right.
Because you talked about it. The Browns have played well in this matchup, right? But weirdly, we're in a stretch where the Bengals on the scoreboard have owned this matchup.
Okay.
So who's the last starting quarterback for the Browns to beat the Bengals?
Last starting quarterback for the Browns to beat the Bengals. Wow. Can I get a year?
No,
I can't do it. I'm going to go. No, that'd be give it away. Let's go. I'm going to say Deshaun Watson.
You got it. Yes. Do you remember when? Do you remember when it was?
No, but I remember, I can visualize him making plays. That's why it popped in my head. When was it?
It was week 1 of the 2023 season. The Bengals have actually won 4 in a row and 5 of 6, which is surprising, because obviously the Browns have always, even in those losses, they've seemed to have matched up pretty well against this football team. And there was a little run there where they were dominating this rivalry.
Well, yeah, and if you look at, what they've done, you're right though. Even last time, the offense looked okay week 1. That's a game that you sometimes you as a coach you look back and go, that's a game I never say you should have won because the other team they get paid money or they do too, but this is a game when you walk back, gosh, that was 17-16. It just felt like a game the Browns let go. And that's when everybody's fresh and everybody's good. So, like I said, we're going to see what happens. Early on in the first quarter, you'll know based on fronts and coverages and formations and shifts. And is this preseason where they're trying to get the clock running or are they trying to win the game? Which, in my opinion, I don't care what your record is, what you're doing. If you're 4-12, then be 5-12. So we'll see. I hope the Browns take that mentality because that speaks to culture more than anything else.
Yeah, and well, look, the Bengals were out there running trick plays, throwing to linemen last week, so I think they're still engaged too, and they're still out there trying to win these football games too. So, what's your pick for this one?
Well, I'm going to go. I think the Browns have showed that they're going to play really hard. I like the Browns. I like because of matchups. I think Taylor's going to try to get 5 out. I think they're going to try to have a big week for Burrow. I think they like their matchups, not with Ward, but I think they really like their matchups with everybody after Ward. So I think they're going to try to pass. I think the Browns create some turnovers, maybe a strip sack, scoop and score. Because obviously the Burrow's going to be by himself back there a bunch with just 5 protecting. So I got the Browns 21-17.
All right, there we go. That is Lance Reisland, our final game preview scouting report here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Don't worry, this is not the last you will have heard of Lance on this podcast.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, right. We'll continue to have him on for scouting reports, draft talk, and the occasional we'll rip on some holiday traditions when we get the
absolutely.
chance.
We'll be the bah humbug for your holiday traditions if you need us.
Yeah, exactly. Lance, it's been great all season. We really appreciate these scouting reports, and I will talk to you later.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Thanks to Lance Reisland for that scouting report on the Bengals. Here we go. It is pick time. You heard me. I asked Lance that trivia question. Who was the last Browns quarterback to beat the Bengals? And he nailed it. Deshaun Watson. Interestingly, I think this is one of those weird things. It feels like the Browns have been really successful in this rivalry, and they have been. Except right now, they've lost 4 in a row and 5 of 6 to this team, which it doesn't sound right. Now, part of that is like you look back to week 1, they miss a couple of kicks. They outplayed the Bengals in that game in all facets, and except they missed a couple of kicks and lost. So just weird things like that. But it's just been interesting how the Bengals have sort of flipped this, but it doesn't feel like they're dominating this rivalry at all. So time to make picks. Ashley, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, so it's funny because we were looking up those numbers, the exact numbers of this streak. So 5 of 6 and the 4 straight that the Browns have obviously lost. And I still think this is my 5th season on the beat. And I don't ever think I've picked the Bengals to beat the Browns because I have always banked on the Browns defense just is a nightmare matchup for this Bengals offense. And I still stand by that right now. I think the way this defense is going to be playing, they are going to give the Bengals a hard time. And look, they should have won that week 1 game. It's very fluky that they did not. So I'll give them that. But then you add in the fact that the Bengals defensively, there's going to be some opportunities there for Shedeur Sanders. The Bengals have the 32nd ranked overall defense in terms of total yards allowed, 392.2. To put that into perspective, the Browns defense, like, my gosh, and their passing yards per game are at 243.3, 27th ranked in the NFL. So there are going to be opportunities. And you compare that to the Browns, like number 2 overall ranked defense. They have the obvious advantage. So I'm betting on the Browns defense versus a bad Bengals defense. And I'm going to say, let's make it weirdly close to the first game. I'm going to say Browns 21, Bengals 16. I'm going to have a 16 in there again.
All right, there we go. I'm going to go the opposite direction. I think this is going to be, I think it's going to be a close-ish game too, probably. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I'm just kind of leaning the Bengals way. Now, to your point, Ashley, like, this defense is still really bad. Now, I don't think they're as bad as they were early in the year when they were like one of the worst defenses I've ever seen. But they're still not awesome. And of course, they're missing guys now. Trey Hendrickson is not there. So this is still not a very good defense at all. The the Browns do match up really well. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I just feel like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, these guys will want to go out on a high note. They have won a couple in a row. So I'm going to take the Bengals. What did you say? What was your score?
21-16, I want to say.
I don't want to pick like the exact same score the other way. I think the Bengals will find some success offensively in this game. I'm going to go Cincinnati 27, and I'll say Browns 19. So yeah, I don't really have great reasoning for that pick, but that's just what we call Week 18. Mary Kay, what are you saying?
Well, sometimes you just have to go with your gut, right? And I believe you have the best record out of it.
I do, but that some of that is just because I pick against the Browns a lot.
So no, good for you for that. And sometimes you just have to go with your gut feeling. And I think most of the time you need to go with your gut feeling when you're making these picks. It's really hard because quite often it comes down to a 1-score game. But I just keep coming back to the Browns defense, going out there once again, playing with their hair on fire. Myles wanting to get the record in a victory. All of his guys ready to back him up on that. I see a really good cornerback tandem for the Cleveland Browns going against these really great receivers. You've got Denzel Ward playing lights out right now. You've got Tyson Campbell playing lights out. You've got Myles going for the record. Again, everybody's going to want to back him up on that. And then when you get to the other side of the ball, I do think that Shedeur Sanders. Now, I don't know if he's going to have Harold Fannin. Harold didn't practice again today. We're taping this on Thursday. He did not practice. So there is a world in which Harold might not be out there. And that will be tough for Shedeur if he doesn't have Harold, because that's his guy. I mean, that is just his go-to guy. But if Harold can be out there, he will be out there. So we'll have to see about that. But I think there will still be opportunities for Shedeur to make explosive plays against this 27th ranked pass defense. When you know that you're going against a defense that's not that good, he's going to have wide eyes, and he's going to see Isaiah Bond downfield, and he's going to fire that ball to him, and he's going to throw that ball downfield to Cedric Tillman, he hasn't even been throwing the ball to him very much. He's going to do the same thing with Jerry Jeudy, because they keep going to that well, even though it's been a long time coming. It's slow getting there. But I think he's going to take those shots. He's going to take those chances, and he's going to hit a number of them. So based on the strength of the Browns defense and some explosives by Shedeur, I'm actually going to take the Browns in this game, and it's going to hurt them in draft position again. And they better be pretty sure that Shedeur is their quarterback of the future, because they might go down to number 7 in this game. There's still a world in which they could get the number 2 overall pick. I mean, it would take a minor miracle, not a minor miracle, a medium-sized miracle for that to happen, because 4 other teams would have to win games. The 4 teams above them would have to win their games this coming weekend. And that's probably not going to happen because they're all pretty bad teams. So they're probably not going to get number 2. But if they win this game, then they could go down to number 7. And that takes you a little bit further away from the Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson, Dante Moore sweepstakes. So you better be pretty happy with what you've seen from Shedeur Sanders, because you probably are going to be moving forward with him next year. So I am taking the Browns to win this game 23-20.
All right, there we go. Our picks for Sunday. Of course, we will have full coverage of that game at cleveland.com/Browns. A programming note. I'm not sure what our post-game pod, apocalypse pod will look like here. If we'll have one Sunday night, if maybe we'll just have to come back on Monday and talk about whatever happens then, just because of the travel and all of that stuff. So just get subscribed. Orange and Brown Talk podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Find us on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. So when we are able to kind of circle up and record a reaction to whatever happens, it'll show up right on your phone as soon as I hit publish on it. You heard from Lance earlier. From Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.